at democracy in Africa and the impact of democracy in Africa. And I'm joined in the studio by the Youth Aid CEO,
Alexander Chokishka.
Alexander, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Talking about democracy and in the African context, what is democracy itself?
Thank you so much, Billy. Democracy in the law, in the most layman understanding, would be the kind of the system of governance where everyone is represented either by themselves or by representatives through election. And basically that's what we want to call democracy. But everyone may define it according to how they understand it and according to how they have experienced it. Probably the person in America is in a position to define democracy different from myself in Uganda. So it's a concept of governance.
Still looking at Africa and our governance challenges, I would ask, what is our preferred system of governance?
I think world over, the democratic system of governance would be a more preferred system. But I tend to think sometimes that given the challenges that we face as a country, we face as a continent, the level of development at which we are, the quality of citizens that we have, sometimes democratic system of governance may not be the best.
When you say kind of citizens we have and our governance challenges, I would think you're talking maybe about us being a less developed country. But it has been shown that there are countries which actually as least developed like us, but they are having a democratic system. Countries like Tanzania, for instance.
Are you saying that Tanzania has a democratic system?
It's preferably more democratic than Uganda.
No.
Uganda.
I want to think that all these countries, none of them is better than the other, because the same things we see today. Because you see, democracy assumes that you have a type of citizenry who understand their right to select leaders and select the right leaders. But also you want to appreciate that democracy calls that we actually pick leaders from ourselves. So if ourselves, we are still not yet to a level of understanding that is desirable, that means that we can only have leaders that are as good as we are. So what that means is that we shall still have incompetent leadership, and at the end of the day, we shall not get service delivery as the desires of a democracy would be.
So what you're saying here is that because the citizenry is not up to date in terms of their roles and responsibilities, the leaders are equally incompetent.
Yes, because society can only get the leaders
from the people.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which brings me to the other big question that many people have been asking is, what can we do to ensure that we have that we better our governance systems? Because if we do not take to democracy, there are probably other systems of governance that we can take to ensure that we have good governance, minus democracy, of course.
Thank you. For the last, I think, 5 years, I've been in civil society trying to preach good governance, trying to think how best we can have good governance in Uganda. From my experience, I'm tempted to think that I think the best way would be to Africanize democracy. Africanizing democracy to mean that, number one, we must appreciate that democracy is something that was brought by the white man. And
it's a foreign concept.
Yes, it's a foreign concept. And when it was brought, as Africans did not seek to better it. We only took it wholesomely, and we started implementing
most times, even our government, the current government, says that, well, Uganda is a democratic country because they elect leaders.
Exactly.
But we have, it is common knowledge that democracy supersedes just electing the election.
Exactly. And you see, at the end of the day, for me, democracy has a lot of respect for certain values that maybe the Europeans or the Americans cherish, but certainly
We don't
those
cherish
are not
them.
cherished here. The African society, in a way, had some kind of supremacy of certain things and certain individuals, and
Like patriarchy.
exactly patriarchy. But now here you are trying to tell us that both men and women should have equal rights to a certain such a thing, which between me and you, you know, is like hiding an elephant in a small room, because at the end of the day, we appreciate that these are just concepts that are being brought. Things like, for instance, we had kingdoms in our African society. Those kingdoms did not include electing a leader, a king from any Tom, Dick, and Harry. There were gazetted clans from which a king comes, and that king had powers that were not just from the people, powers that were from the supernatural beings, the ancestors, you know, and that kind of thing. And that's why you see that in societies like Buganda, which still have this kind of leadership, the kingdom kind of leadership, you see that there's a lot of respect for the leadership. There's a kind of organized system of managing the resources. Any Muganda around will tell you that all the land here is for the Kabaka, and for us we are squatters. So once the Kabaka says this and the other, because he has the authority. So I think we would be much better being in such kind of arrangement, because at the end of the day realize that the white man's concept of democracy is not one that is working for us very well. Instead, our leaders seem to be using it to commit atrocities, and at the end of the day, we still dream of good governance, but it may not come.
Well, talking about Africanizing democracy itself, we have the issues. There are still those general issues when you talked about, which you talked about the African society being as it was. We have the issues like human rights that have never been, that probably African institutions will not recognize.
Yes.
Which are basic principles that go hand to hand with democracy.
You see, human rights, it still comes back
Liberty
to the origin.
and for every man.
It still comes back to the origin. Between me and you, issues of liberty, human rights, and all of that, you know, that these are Western concepts that came. If I would ask human rights, what is the equivalent of human rights in our vernacular here? Liberty. What is our equivalent of liberty in our vernacular here? Now, all these words that you cannot find a direct translation into our local language, you know that these are borrowed concepts, and we still struggle to try to understand them now. In our African society, if you were caught, for instance, stealing, the norm was that you should actually be stoned to death, because then you are a rehabilitated society and therefore should be eliminated. The white man is telling you that according to some of these concepts, you should be presumed innocent
Until proven.
proven guilty. Now, you have caught someone stealing red hand. Now, I don't know how much further you want to prove that this person actually is a thief.
So the other one of the important thing there that I would ask is why has democracy failed? Would it be that because we do not think of it, we haven't Africanized it? Is that the reason why we would say democracy has totally failed in Africa?
Democracy has not necessarily totally failed. We still hope that
the world version of democracy has failed.
Exactly. We still hope that the propagators and the promoters of the concept will do whatever it takes, and at some point we shall be able to have it succeed. But the answer to that question is basic and very simple. This is not our concept. It's a concept that is just brought, and we
do not have respect for it. We do not.
Yeah, we can only.
We don't see it as our own.
Exactly. We can only still keep struggling, because I mean, our leaders will tell you that, hey, we have elections every 5 years, we have a judiciary, we have a legislature, and all that.
So we're democratic.
We're democratic, but in actual sense, are we serving a democracy? We do not. So at the end of the day, for as long as certain people still want to use that concept to amass whatever they can amass and hold people hostage, we shall keep crying democracy, democracy, but at the end of the day, we may not get there soon.
In terms of the continent, Africa, we see that we are moving away from the traditional means of taking power, which is coup d'etats, and forcing people out of office. It seems like democracy, or let's say the concept of electing leaders is on a resurgence. It's coming back very strong.
Well,
could we say that Africa is changing? We are trying to move away from.
It is because we are still implementing things that we don't understand very well. So because of that, we still cannot hold the ego of some of our leaders. Because then, if you say that we can only take leadership through an election, and I say let me go into the election, and you manipulate the election, and for some reason I cannot take the power, then there is still this other alternative available to me, because those days we used to conquer, we used to fight, and once we fought, we would take power. So as an African, I still think that the other old method can still work, and I just get a few spears or guns, and I push you away.
The other question is, what can we do to better, or to create the democratic society?
There are a number of things, Billy, and between me and you, we know the major challenges facing our democracy here is that, number one, people are poor, and because of that, they cannot make independent decisions.
Well, that reminds me of the concept, a concept that I learned when I was in school, of socialism, poor people, and capitalism, wealthy people.
Yes, so we are poor, and because we are poor, the few who have the money, they keep manipulating the democratic system. Number two, our quality of education, our literacy levels are still wanting, and because of that, there are not very many people who can articulate issues of national importance, or even to decide which one is right and which one is wrong.
The most visible is our parliament.
Well, for lack of a better example. And the other one is, of course, our level of education, our kind of education that we have. This still same thing. It's still a colonial kind of tool that we cannot use that education to actually understand better our society, understand better and manipulate our environment. The other thing is that we still have a broken value system in Africa, in Uganda. Gone are the days when people used to think that if you do something that is going to affect very many people, then you should, in your heart, appreciate that you're doing something wrong. Today, it's very different. Someone will easily get money that is meant to buy medicine for 1 million people, and he will use the money to do their own things. He will not care about the lives of these 1 million people, and at the end of the day, they walk scot-free. The other thing is that we have another very big problem of religion, which also is something that we borrowed, and it definitely replaced our traditional religious system. That these ones are also agents of destruction and agents of if I don't know the opposite of development. But over and above, for as long as these are not addressed, if we cannot have a good quality of education that can produce responsible citizens, if we cannot have people who have the means to earn a living, that can stand their ground even amidst scarcity, if we cannot have a proper value system, that people have the simple value virtues like honesty, like integrity, like those things really that every basic person should have. If we cannot have a level of understanding that most people know where the country has been and they know where it should go, I am afraid we may not have that so-called democracy that we want to have?
Well, we're still here on Google Day Television discussing democracy in Africa. It's a very wide concept and has a lot of twists and turns, but let's go for a short break. And when we come back, Alexander will be telling us what we can expect in the near future in terms of a democratic Africa. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Heads Show.
We gather, produce, and deliver news and other events happening in your area.
We engage experts, even you, the public, on topical issues such as business, health, family, and money, sex, and God.
All these issues inspire you, way or another, to make your daily decisions.
With the motivation of all your sports updates, we let you know what's happening to your greatest stars, both local and international.
I am Samantha Ndiamohachi.
Billy Gang Bruno.
Matovu Ali.
The Heads. We inspire you
And educate you.
from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. every weekday on Google Day Television.
All right, welcome back from that short break. We are still here discussing democracy in Africa, the democratic institution as it is, with Alexander Chokwijuka, the CEO of Youth Aid Africa. Alexander, talking about democracy, we have looked at probably why it is not working in Africa.
Sure.
And we have tried to look at the things we can do to better it. You talked about Africanizing democracy, but in case this doesn't happen, what are we to see in the near future in Africa? Or what is the trend of governance? Because when we talk about democracy, we talk about governance, and it's practically our society revolves around democracy today, which are human rights, rule of law. Those are all democratic.
Those things that we don't understand.
The things that we don't understand, but we
Yeah.
we are pushing for.
You see, Billy, I may not be able to tell what the future is going to be like, but for sure I can tell, because every day we are struggling to ensure that people have a means to earn, people appreciate, we get a better kind of education. And partly that's why some of us are in the civil society space, to push for some of these things. Probably if we successfully push the players to ensure that we have these things done, maybe we can say that we shall have better democratic processes and practice in the near future. But when that is going to be, I may not tell, but we definitely hope that at some point certain things as abuse of human rights, abuse of rule of law processes and all that, injustices and all that, maybe will be done away with. Once that is done, then we'll maybe also think that and hope that that our kind of education is going to improve, hopefully. We think that people will start appreciating that the things that we do and how we do them has a close and direct impact on the future of our society. Once that happens, maybe we shall have democracy as you see it, like the one you see in America and all those other countries.
Well, the American democracy itself is questionable to some, because I saw a list of how they rank democratic countries, and it's not ranking very well.
Yeah, but at least it's better than
It's better than ours,
yeah.
but still bring us back to the same issue of why some of these things like human rights violations, anyways, and are not looked at. Some of them are ignored and others are not. Would you say that the political sphere where we need some people actually need it more than no one really cares what they're doing? It's a question of for Uganda's instance, I'll use Uganda as the best example. The West needs troops in Somalia, so whatever happens or whatever our leaders do here in Uganda would be ignored as long as they're comfortable with. It's what they call interests versus principles.
Yes, because at the end of the day, you want to appreciate that we as a country are not like I said, we are implementing things from somewhere we don't even know. So the promoters of these things will definitely, at some point, they will have to sneak in their own
And compromise
interests.
and-
Yes, and compromise, and we have no option because I mean, just imagine if Enes Papua said that take soldiers to Somalia, and he said no, I will not take them. Then say, okay, tomorrow we are withdrawing our money. The money that we give you to buy guns, we give you to buy this and the other, what will happen? So we are left with no option but to oblige, and which in a way is the problem, because at the end of the day, we don't want to think that this is the best way we should govern our country. And later on, Billy, you will appreciate that we actually not in charge of our affairs. Someone somewhere is remote controlling us, yeah.
Well, that was the topical discussion. Still here Alexander, thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
That was the topical discussion looking at democracy in Africa. But stay tuned to Google Day Television. We're going for a short break, but when we come back, we shall have the How It's Made segment. And after that, it will be the Standard Magazine with Samantha and Ndiamohachi. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Heads Show.
We gather, produce, and deliver news and other events happening in your area.
We engage experts, even you, the public, on topical issues such as business, health, family, and money, sex, and God.
All these issues inspire you, way or another, to make your daily decisions.
With the motivation of all your sports updates, we let you know what's happening to your greatest stars, both local and international.
I am Samantha Ndiamohachi.
Billy Gang.